Ecovillage. So here we are on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, west coast of Canada. And our school has been here for the last, well, almost 23 years as a learning community. So our Eco Village is somewhat unique in that since 1999, we've been here intergenerationally, interculturally, and as an interfaith community. And the design of that is really comes from one of our underlying philosophies, which is the acronym of our Eco Village, that we're one united resource. Means it speaks to this idea that we each come as a gift. We each have a contribution in village building and especially in revillaging. So whether the littles, middles, or bigs of the youngers or the adults to the elders, no matter how able or less able, regardless of our level of access, that we are looking to have um, each of us know our contribution as learners in the learning community. And so, as we move forward with this, um, we're actually a nonprofit community services cooperative, which also means that we can have multiple stakeholders. It could be that some of the folks who actually own the school are people who come from, they might be a daycare down the road. Excuse me, they might be teachers that are part of the school. They might be a university. So it allows individuals or organizations to actually have an equitable model to create a learning community. And that is the foundation of our school, really. It's about creating regenerative community for a change. And this is an interesting model here where the land use zoning that we created in 1999 actually set a precedent in Canada. It's a very unique allowance for land use, which in most understandings in North America, people see the legal and regulatory barriers to creating an eco village or an intentional community or land based learning space. Because generally, you're not allowed to have multiple activities for a holistic, regenerative lifestyle all on one parcel of land, as we call real estate. Sorry, our school is actually a park, it's a farm, it's an educational center, thus the school, and it's got a living allowance for a housing cluster. On top of that, the rezoning allows for food and accommodation services for our educational programs and unlimited businesses related to agriculture and one for profit business. Within that land use model, that's actually one of the fundamental aspects that we teach about within our school. Kindergarten children understand land design and understand how holistic life means having all these great things all in one place, not just being a subdivision, not just being a farm, not just being a park, but to integrate that into one way of living. And it actually means that our school, as a land based and place based learning site, isn't really about a 9 to 3 kind of vision for how we learn, how we operate, how we function. It's an immersed learning environment that actually takes us from very local skill based and reskilling elements of daily life all the way up to the global picture. And whether it's really looking at teaching on site and originally with many partners in different countries and sister eco villages and projects around the world, or being simply in the rhythm of the day. And our vision and really our mission is to create learning into a worldwide vision in some ways. That with the linkages with the global eco village network, that we all see ourselves as teachers and we all see ourselves as learners, regardless of our age. If you look at this through the lens of the dimensions from Ecovillage design. We do teach the Ecovillage design education certificate here. So it's easy for people to really see through the built environment, everything mirrors back to us these dimensions, because they're real and they're practical and they're not a theoretic model. Our Ecovillage is quite well known for our lawful permaculture work in environmental design. So we kind of have a tagline that if it's not legal when we start, we'll help make it legal as we go. And again, this is often done with high school students. They're the dreamiest of seeing the injustice and why something fairly needs to be more environmentally appropriate and well designed. Excuse me. And it's often a high school group who will work with us. Sorry. To in order to um, work through a design and then present it to government. So our school works with all three levels of local, provincial, and federal government, and we're kind of teaching them about the dimensions as we go, and we're teaching all of us as we live it. And that's how we actually create new policy in Canada. And from a social perspective, everything here tries to work through a sociocratic model. So we're trying to equalize and include as much of the design capacity from our um, team on all levels, and give people that kind of input as well. And it also comes from an eldership and childship model. So that intergenerational learning is really an important part of having children right in the center, no matter what the age, of everything that's happening. It doesn't matter if we have a 5-year old, they're pretty much up on the desk or the counter of what's happening and right in the middle of it. And children not seeing life in a social dimension as being good workers and going to school with that kind of method of like, how do we produce the best people to get the right jobs, but more children as learning to live the best they can. It kind of takes out this idea of what is age appropriate, and they can lean in to so many different methods and models of learning within that. And a big part of that is cultural, leaving behind that kind of colonization training for how life is meant to look from the Western worldview, and trying to create a balance back into the Western and Indigenous worldview so that everything is a holistic and integrated. It's a relational model. It's not a compartmentalized and segmented. In fact, even the dimensions, we want to see them kind of spiraled together, not necessarily as separate quadrants. And that is the sorry, I have a catch in my throat. That is actually part of the economy or the ecos of land-based learning, is that everything is circular here, in the sense like people walk in and realize 90% of our school is created through salvage and recycled materials. And that's almost unbelievable when you see the very large infrastructure we have. But we're actually importing waste to our school and utilizing it to build buildings and actually to create massive acts of beauty. They're not like looking like kind of run down ramshackle, somebody just hobbled this together. Um, Part of it is to have an artistic life. And so whether grade threes are sculpting on the buildings with earthen and natural materials and natural pigments and making butterflies and bees, or high school folks are in that economy of paying it forward and giving their learning, often groups will leave something, an act of beauty that they build into the environment and kind of mark what they've put their hands to. And Tetla is actually a form of indigenous value system where we're always looking forward and towards how we design for those 7 generations and create an exchange within that. So it's not a transactional relationship, it's actually a relationship, period. And that really brings us to kind of the economy or the ecology of things in the whole ecosystem. That is all describing environmental design or holistic design or eco-village design. Our Ecovillage is known far and wide, I think, for natural building school that we've had on site for more than 20 years. And really, how that has brought forward all kinds of systems technology, and whatever we create here, we actually then help it to become legal. So, wastewater systems that are the only one in Canada and now can be replicated by others. That's a kind of the holistic design of an immersed learning environment for the school, and how that sort of on campus or on site, as we'll say, a learning environment actually mirrors back to me everything from a whole way of living. We've also started an online school. And so that is a portal where most of what we do on land actually now shows up online too. And so the Living Village Institute is part of our Eco Village. When we can, we'll take people even from online and walk them around on camera on site. Having satellite uplink is going to be a big part of being on land and online simultaneously, and hybridizing our learning experiences. In the touched and held hands-on applied learning, it's a very different experience to be online, especially for young people, but there is something there that can still give it forward. The kind of eye candy that's here at our Eco Village with the built environment actually makes it quite intriguing to be outside, and watching folks dig in, if possible, hands on. A lot of what that's been historically has been either part day or up to week long programs with kindergarten to grade 12 classes who come to our Eco Village. So we host probably more than 4,000 school children a year on site, and they may actually stay with us in residence on the school, live on the land, and be in the rhythm of the day and the week. Or they could be our own programs where people and families and children actually we self design. What is this particular learner's kind of poetry of life, and how will they design their learning? There is something called the self-design system. So sometimes homeschoolers actually bring in curriculum that they're connected to in a wider way, or we can design as well on site. We also have Thriving Roots Wilderness School here. So that's a little bit more a tweens kind of age group, who's on land and in the wild spaces and learning reskilling of wildcraft arts. We also have 13 universities and colleges that have our Eco Village as an extension classroom. So we're juggling multiple learners, but not necessarily separate from each other. We want to have folks learning from each other. And as this moves forward, one of the big questions is, what is it that stands out for us as like one of the great challenges? And once we started to ask, when can we close our school? And that is one of our great challenges. It is the ideal that all of our children, all the way through all age groups, relearn regenerative living. And it doesn't have to be an education program. It doesn't have to be a school, that this actually is part of how we live. And as a focus on that, we're working on a brilliant project called Awaken the Dragon. So we want to invite you to that. It's a way to kind of decompress the anxiety and the challenges that we're facing with deep adaptation and climate change adaptation. So our next generation eco villagers are the proud elements. These kids, 15 years of living and learning and loving in situ. And if we could change anything, I think it would be to abolish the words work and job and decolonize ourselves so we're not kind of part of that um, way of learning that maybe the mainstream culture has taught us, and where we can come back to land and place and a way of being that we all know our connection. So I want to say, Haichka. Thank you so much for your listening. Heitskes.